Hello. Hi, and welcome to today's podcast on climate conversations. Today we have a special guest. We have Wole from Nigeria. Wole is a sustainability and development strategist, a writer, a photographer with experience in designing and executing green projects and integrating sustainability ESG practices into business and nonprofit operations. He holds a master's degree in sustainability studies from Ben Gurion University in Tel Aviv and is also a member of the Youngo Adaptation Working Group, the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers, and Climate Reality Shaper. Namaste and welcome to this podcast, Ulure. By me.
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Hi, Achuth. It's a
Awesome.
pleasure to be on the episode, and it's a great initiative, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yep, yep. Thank you so much. We actually met by chance the ACM
Yes,
after the party, if I remember correctly.
yes, it was purely by chance.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Olivia, for your time and coming for these conversations that we have. So, starting off, I wanted to start off by talking about sustainability consulting. You are an academic. You studied sustainability studies. You also practice in the area of sustainability consulting. How does sustainability consulting intersect with addressing climate issues?
Thank you, Achuth, and it's a pleasure once again to be on the podcast and share my ideas. Um, I think I'll start a bit about my background before sort of trying to answer your question. Growing up, I've always been passionate about the environment, about uh, the beauty and the natural environment, especially the natural environment. Really appreciate green vegetation and just lush sceneries and enjoying um, just the peace that comes with nature. I think it's also because I grew up in a small town, so there were a lot of trees, a lot of gardens, and forest around. So I think that sparked my interest in issues relating to the environment, and I went on to study urban and regional planning, which gave me the academic, background into issues of conservation, environmental management, and sustainability. And it made me understand that we as humans are the custodian of the environment, and we have a huge role to play in shaping what the environment looks like. And the responsibilities on us to make sure we use the resources and sort of design with the environment and not against it. And I think that was where my interest in sustainability started. So after my first degree, I, you know, did some volunteering with a few organizations, which made me really appreciate the work people in the environmental space do. And it was just the perfect way to start my career in this. Then I joined an organization in Abuja, which is Nigeria's capital. And that was where my background in sustainability consulting started, working majorly to sort of firstly increase interest around sustainability, both on the government and private side of things, and also for renewable energy integration, because we were big on renewables and how it plays a huge role in the global energy transition, and also to meet peculiar local needs of addressing energy poverty and the inaccessibility to electricity. So I think the intersection with the whole climate issue is the realization that we must begin to rethink our practices and also um, rethink how we, design, innovate, and execute projects around with and around nature and the environment. And as consultants, we have a role to sort of, advise, um, provide the factual analysis, sort of engage the stakeholders to come together and play a role. And that was majorly the work I did, bringing people together to uh, begin to have awareness on this topic. How do we solve these problems? How do we localize these solutions to our own context? How do we also begin to think about the policies and the regulations around topics of, fossil fuel and transition into cleaner sources of energy? How can businesses begin to incorporate, renewable energy into their businesses or practices? And also, the data shows that in some cases, we see that it's profitable to just transition and begin to use clean energy as your um, source of power. And it is really important for people to see the business side, the business case of sustainability as well. And I think when people take these considerations into making informed business practices, it is for not just the good of the enterprise, but also the community at large and the world itself. Um, yeah, and I also see that on the policy side of things, there is also this interest by government working on a number of policy related projects, showing that government is also ready to see how, we can use the resources we have in a more sustainable and efficient manner and begin to take into consideration not just ourselves, but also future generations when planning for mega projects and seeing how that weighs in. And finally, I would say it's also another key way um, for in sustainability consulting that I've seen is more responsible investing, where investors, and this was also part of the work I did, investors are beginning to align with much more, align with environment, social and governance criteria, ESG, into their investment decisions to see, yes, there is a solid business case, they want to return on investments, but also considering that what does this business, what does this enterprise, what impact would it have on, the people, the environment? It might be good, but if it's not good for the environment and it's not socially viable, you see that responsible investors tend to sort of let such businesses go. So I think these are the ways I see the alignment with sustainability consulting and
Yeah,
climate
totally,
action. Thank
totally.
you.
I think that's a very interesting perspective. You use the word sustainability. So it's actually sustainability on two fronts. Sustainability of the business organization, of the economic activity, ensuring that there is a viability in terms of business, and also ensuring that on the other side, on the ecological side, on the side of the planet, you ensure that there is fewer carbon emissions, you ensure that you have renewable sources of energy which is being utilized, and meeting the
Yes.
SDG of the United Nations. And also, we talked about inclusivity, inclusion of all the
Yeah.
population in these kinds of activities, if I remember in one of our conversations, which is also very profound. So, since I got you an expert over here for this conversation, I also wanted to understand what is green investments. So, what are the challenges and prospects on green investments? So, most of the people who are here on the podcast as listeners are probably laymen who are not aware of what green investments are. So, could you please tell us more on what green investments are and how, what are the challenges, especially considering you are from the African continent over there?
Thank you, Achuth. And that's a very good question. And it's it's really important that you firstly, it comes from investment generally, where you sort of allocate financial resources to, a project, a company, a business idea. And the green aspect of things is just that you're looking at more sustainable and environmental conscious practices and technologies. So a green investment would go into sectors like renewable energy, electric vehicles, green buildings, go into climate adaptation and mitigation. And it's finance, but it's just going into, the green sectors of the society, and also to more nature conservation projects. So all this into reforestation campaigns. These are green investments. And relating to your question, that what are the challenges and prospects, especially on the African continent, I think generally it is the limited access to finance. Firstly, there is, compared to other continents, Africa still ranks low in finance generally, both finance from the continent and outside the continent. And this has also translated to the green investment sector, where there is just not enough finance to go into the right businesses and bankable projects that are being designed or are currently being executed. And secondly, it is also an issue of still policy barriers that exist. Without the right policies, it's hard to get the right investment, because investors are scared of what would happen if we don't have the right enabling policy, or if government comes out to um, enact a policy that would affect our investment. And an example is if government continues to support the fossil fuel industries through subsidies, it means that investors who are naturally inclined into investing in more greener alternatives would tend off that sector. I remember speaking with an innovator designing electric vehicles in East Africa, and was asking about West Africa. I was like, we can't touch West Africa for now because fuel is still heavily subsidized. And until it becomes a level playing ground, that we can come in and people then see the business case that with our electric bikes, you spend less on energy consumption in a day. That's when we can make that case. But to compete head on with, say, fuel subsidies for the petroleum industry is kind of risky for such a business. So this tells you how policy sort of shapes the general landscape. And I think moving on to the prospect, it is just that whenever there is a challenge, we also think of solutions and what we can do. And I think it is just gradually embracing a number of innovative finance models to addressing this problem of limited financial resources for the green sector. And gradually, we're seeing an increase in impact investing, really focused on trying to scale various green projects. And these investors are big on the impact side. What impact would it have on people, especially people who are in last mile communities that, for instance, do not have access to reliable energy supply? And impact investors are willing to take a bet and take a risk on these businesses to say, since we know the impact, the socioeconomic impact your project, your business has on the community, we are able to invest in you to make this happen. Also, government and private sector sort of embracing more um, public-private partnerships to execute various green projects, large utility scale solar. A colleague of mine is currently working on a project that would, which is more of a government public part, government private partnership to create utility scale solar farms in East Africa, which is such an interesting project. Anytime I get to speak with him and see what he's doing. Um, and recently, Nigeria, for instance, issued two series of green bonds, and it was government
Wow.
really trying to, yes, invest in clean energy projects, nature projects, and some other African countries are doing the same. I think Kenya is also
True, true.
talking
We have the
about,
same.
yeah,
We
Kenya is
have
also
something
talking.
similar over here.
Yes, Kenya is also trying to issue such bonds. Um, so yes, these are really interesting things we see. And the second case is the rise of innovative businesses, where we see that yes, the challenges posed by climate change would be severe on vulnerable communities, but it's also an opportunity to sort of think about how do we adapt with this. Take for instance, Polar Advisors, which is a startup based in East South Africa. I think headquarters is in Zambia, and what they are doing is to provide climate insurance for farmers who to help
Wow.
them sort of adapt to impact on of climate change on farm yields, which most of the projection shows that agricultural yields will be affected by a change in climate. And this is, a business idea to sort of say, how do we then help farmers adapt to this challenge, and how do we do this innovatively? And we are seeing a lot of businesses come up providing um, from insurance to hardware technologies and many other things to adapt to this impact and also mitigate um, greenhouse gas emissions. And I think thirdly, to answer the question, is the prospect of the private sector really playing an increased role. A lot of finance still comes as grants into the continent, mostly as grants. And I think beyond that, yes, the grants are needed, but beyond that is the use of capital, private capital through loans and other forms of investment, equities, and getting them into the right businesses and projects. And I saw a report from last year. We talked about how there is about um, uh, a I think it's $1 trillion worth of private capitals on the continent, and it's left for
Wow.
us to begin to think on how do we begin to leverage this capital into greener sectors. How do we make investors see that um, I think it's time for to stop investing in fossil fuel projects and embrace renewables. And this is the work we all have to do, yourself, myself, trying to see how to get this finance into the right space that will have inclusive and equitable impact on our communities.
Well, that's a lot of things out there. So you talked about how long-term policies are required. If new government comes in and they change the policies, it
Yeah.
substantially affects the investment that comes in. You also talked about how the requirement for social audits, audit of the
Yes.
funding that goes on, so that there is kind of a mechanism where the investors can actually tangibly understand whether the impact is accurate, whether it has to be amended, or some interventions
Yeah.
have to be made in some way. So it's like a third party external stakeholder assurance. You talked about that. You also talked about climate insurance, which is also exciting. So even in India, monsoons play an important role. So if we have a bad monsoon, it even affects the stock markets. So again,
Mm,
that's yet another interesting insight that you just gave. And obviously the PPP model, in
yeah.
which we have to have more of private sector investment as well in order to leverage the whole growth in the space.
Yes. Yes.
That
Very
was a
important.
profound answer. So we are coming towards the end of the podcast time. So I just wanted to uh, ask one more question to you. So essentially, you are also a photographer. You also write for World Economic Forum's agenda. You are essentially a storyteller. So as a young person, how do you think people are taking action on sustainability issue with respect to uh, you being? So I wanted you to answer this from the point of a storyteller, from the point of an activist based in the Africa, and also towards the end, what would be your call of action? What would be one pertinent way in which an ordinary person can contribute to climate action and promote
Mm.
sustainability? I know I asked a lot of questions, but you said
Yes,
the media person who fits all this criteria.
thank you, Achuth. Yeah, and I think I, yes, I'm a photographer, and it's something I do just to amplify stories that are important to me. I feel like photography and art in general is a way to talk about social issues and also environmental issues. So I think about a few years ago, I did a documentary around deforestation in the community I was in at that time, and it was just a story about we are gradually losing our forests, and we have to just do something about it because of the important role they play in the ecosystem. And I think that was just my own way of contributing to the conversation. And much more recently, I've been documenting the stories of informal waste workers and the role they play in our urban centers in attempting to keep them clean. And this work often goes unrecognized. So it's important that we continue to spotlight these issues that happen. And if we don't bring it to the fore for people to see that they happen, um, some people won't pay attention. They won't know until be like, oh, truly, we are losing our forest. We need to do something about it. And I think that's the work um, photography and writing can do to help people see what's happening within the society and begin to spur them to take action. And then that is why I do what I do with trying to write about these topics. Um, they are mostly around stories, things about the environment and more social issues. And from doing this, I met a lot of amazing young people within and outside Nigeria who are doing really great things. I belong to a number of these communities. We both belong to the Global Shapers community, and it's just great when I see how we all are taking action. And there was I think, a study that showed that um, young people are more interested in what political parties and political aspirants, what they are interested to do about issues relating to conservation, environmental degradation, and climate action, which is something they consider before electing these officials. It shows that there is this large awareness among young people, which is really inspiring for me as a young person. And it's just showing us that we're able to
There is no
come
planet
to,
B, right?
yes, 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 right. We have to just come together and take action and move the needle. And I think the active participation by young people is so inspiring. I was at COP27, and it was just great to see young people within around corners. It was really hard to protest, to demonstrate in Egypt, but we could still see young people within the various zones coming together, trying to engage leaders and making their stance known to the decision makers that we just have to take action. And lastly, it is just participation where people just take action. And I see young people volunteering, say, oh, I want to do this, and they join organizations who are doing work in that area. And also just we talked about the innovative enterprises we are seeing, and a lot of young people are involved in that, having amazing social enterprises and startups trying to play a role in addressing things. So young people are really taking action, and it's so inspiring to see. And I think we can just do more and also hold our leaders accountable. And to your final question on a call to action, that's really there are a lot of things we have to do, but I think something that really inspires me is this saying that we have not inherited the earth from our parents, but we borrowed it from our children. So essentially, this earth is a loan from future generations. And if we change our view from seeing it as an inheritance, we can squander to a loan that we have to be responsible about. We will, I think that would make us um, take better action. And I think that consciousness to be like, I must keep my environment clean. I must, you know, instead of if I can afford an electric vehicle and to reduce my ecological footprint, I should do that.
Wow.
If I can, yeah, donate to an environmental cause in my community, I can do that. Plant
Sure.
trees and
So
hold leaders
essentially,
accountable.
it's like trusteeship. You would want to have a
Yep,
trusteeship mentality.
yep. So I think that would really change a lot of things we see going
Awesome.
on. So yes, that's what I would say.
I think I would just summarize that in probably like two words, like two phrases. If not us, who? If not now, when? And that was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really
Well
amazing
said.
answer, Olu.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I mean, you covered
Thank
all the
you so.
aspects. You are a storyteller. You encourage people. You also write on agenda. You are an active participant on various issues in the African continent and Nigeria. So thank you so much for sparing your time talking to us. And I wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Thank you.
Th- Thank you, Achuth. Thank you for hosting me. And I look forward to other episodes and to listen to great minds across the world.
Yep, I'm just stopping it.